Based upon the comments that were coming in from the CNN crew in the hotel in Baghdad, that the operation was successful in striking targets with a high degree of precision. At least that's the reporting according to CNN.
Was there an Iraqi attempt? Was there an Iraqi attempt to launch missiles, sir?
Do you have any?
We've had reports of missile launches, but none of them have been confirmed.
What about the Scuds in western Iraq at those air bases on the border? Have you got any reading on that? Are those fairly high priority targets?
Yes, they are a fairly high priority target.
And how'd you do?
I'm not prepared to say how we did or what we've done so far.
I'll follow up on that. At the end of this operation, this phase of the operation, when you get a little better picture, and could you come back or have one of your staff come back and give us a briefing?
You'll be getting regular briefings, and we'll be, as the Secretary said, we're going to be as forthcoming as we possibly can, while at the same time preserving operational security.
Are you confident that your targeting of command and control sites has left Saddam Hussein the ability to, number one, know what's happening to his forces, and number two, to communicate to you that he wants to quit if he does decide so?
Again, Melissa, I don't have any information at this point on the overall effectiveness of the operation. What I said was the preliminary reports are very positive, but we are in the very earliest stages of this, and therefore there's not a lot of detailed information we can give you on what the effect of the bombing campaign has been on specific strategic categories of targets.
Is there participate?
Pardon?
Is there a military commander like Saddam Hussein still alive to surrender if there is such a decision?
I really don't have anything I can give you.
Did you know where Saddam was when the attacks began, and was that a target even though he was not the target?
We have not been tracking Mr. Saddam Hussein for the purpose of targeting him.
General, can you characterize in any general way how long the current beginning phase of this operation will continue? That is, the air operation will be the rest of I guess, tonight and tomorrow morning, or throughout tomorrow? Give people any kind of general idea how long this first phase will...
The air part of the campaign will continue until the whole campaign is completed. It doesn't end.
Do you believe the threat of a missile attack by the Iraqis has been eliminated at this point?
I cannot answer that at this time until we get some assessments in.
Damage to any oil facilities at all?
I don't have bomb damage assessment yet. I can't answer that question.
General, how massive is this first wave? Are we talking 500 missions, 1,000 missions tonight?
I think tomorrow we'll be in a better position to try to give you a handle on that, but this early in the operation, I'm reluctant to give those numbers out until I've had a chance to talk to General Schwarzkopf in greater detail.
General Powell, when you say hundreds of sorties...
All U.S. services were involved in this part of the campaign.
When you say, General Powell, that there were hundreds of sorties, does that mean that there were not more than 1,000?
I think I'll leave it at that, between a bread box or something else. Hundreds of sorties. Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, for those people around the country who are hungry, as I think probably the whole country is, for a measure of operational information, the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs are being very clear. Either they won't release information now for what the Chairman calls operational security, or in some cases they simply do not know, which is, at this point in any campaign, a perfectly legitimate answer, because as they point out, pilots are still in the sky. This was an entirely air operation up until now. There have been no ground forces committed to the battle as of yet, and some of the pilots are either still up in the air or are back at their bases and have not been fully debriefed. But the President set the tone in his remarks that the U.S. Air Force, and as it is confirmed by the Secretary, the British and the French, and in some way, we're not quite sure how yet, the Saudis and the Kuwaitis are involved in the initial attack, have been going for the offensive military capability of Saddam Hussein in Kuwait and Iraq. That, I assume, means they're going for almost everything that in any way, shape, or form could assist the war effort, but we'll talk to our military analysts in just a moment. The Kuwaiti Air Force, which fled tactical retreat, one might say, at the early hours of the Iraqi invasion, back on the 2nd of August and flew out of the country, has been residing for some 5.5 months in eastern Saudi Arabia. They fly both U.S. and French aircraft. They fly the A4, the American Skyhawk, and they also fly French.
Sensible people are behind the wheel of any kind of vehicle. During the raids, we saw one or two people, one or two vehicles, but believe me, there's no traffic as usual.
No. Bernie, I don't want to...
No ambulances. We've heard no sirens. No fire trucks, says John Holloman. And incidentally, only once did the air raid sirens sound in Baghdad.
All right. We are all curious at this end, as our audience as well, I know. Our telephone communications were interrupted from there. Satellite phones went down as well. How did CNN manage to stay on the air during all this? Are you connected through Iraqi television, and therefore we believe it is still up and operating? Bernie Shaw?
I'm just thinking about whether I want to candidly answer your question.
All right.
Tom, let me take a pass on your question, and the next time I see you, I'll explain profusely.
All right. I understand, and the next time we see each other, Bernie, it's on me. Trust me. It's a very enterprising Bernard Shaw, John Holloman, and Peter Arnett, who are not only enterprising but brave.
I'm in the hotel, but all the windows shake and you can hear them. The oil refinery itself is about 3 miles behind us, so the shells go over us to hit the oil refinery. So it certainly is artillery because they're used to it from various other wars.
Well, as we know, the Iraqis have some very good artillery. They have Argentinian artillery, which, if anything, is deemed superior to the best the U.S. has, 155s, and the artillery does have great range. CBS News cameraman David Green, just a few miles south of the Kuwaiti border, reporting the first confirmed report we've had of Iraqi attack inside Saudi Arabia. David Green.
CNN's satellite maven and chief engineer Nick Robertson has been at the Iraqi television headquarters, our feed point, for the past 2 hours, and he has seen Saddam Hussein. Nick, I know you were there to attempt to get these pictures that we took overnight out to the rest of the world. Tell us first of all about who you saw there, the names in the news in Iraq today.
Initially, I met Minister Jazem. After that, I went to sit at the feed point. We were unable to feed for lack of communications. While I was waiting at the feed point, President Saddam Hussein walked by on his way, I believe, to record a message either to American people or to the people of Iraq.
Yeah. Guess with me, Nick, how long ago it was when you saw President Saddam Hussein come into the TV station?
It would be within the last hour. It would probably approximately be 9 a.m. local time. That's 6 a.m. GMT when I saw him.
Yeah, and the Information Minister Jazem was there with him, I suppose, and were they talking together?
Jazem I saw separately at an earlier point, approximately 8:30 local time.
Okay, and the reason that our viewers can't see these pictures is because I guess the telephones don't work at Iraqi TV, or they can't get the pictures and sounds out to the satellite.
There's no attempt, to my knowledge, being made to feed at this point in time, and the reason for that being, I believe, a lack of communications to Amman, Jordan, the next step in our feed process from here. I believe they're trying to make contact with Amman, Jordan. I was left very much in the dark with no information.
Yeah, well, of course, our viewers are in the dark as well, because I'm looking at what could be as much as 90 minutes of terrific videotape of last night's attack, which is here in my hands rather than on your TV sets at home, and we apologize for the problems we're having with Iraqi television getting this material to you. I'm sure they're trying to do what they can to get the pictures out, but you got to have telephones to make contact before you turn on a multi-100-watt satellite transmission to the outside world. Nick Robertson, we're very glad to have you back safe and sound, because, as you know, anytime anybody leaves this hotel and goes to a sensitive location like the TV station, there's potential for trouble. So, to our colleagues in Atlanta, we're very glad to have Nick home safe and sound, and we'll be back to you with another updated report. But now we know, at least, that President Saddam Hussein, who we heard might be making a television address a couple of hours ago, has just arrived to record that address. So it might still be available to us, perhaps even live sometime in the next few hours, if Iraqi television can send it out. So we'll stay in touch. John Holloman, CNN Live in Baghdad.
John, just to reiterate, can you please clarify, Saddam Hussein was actually seen this morning, it is now 10 a.m. in Baghdad, in person?
That's right. Our man Nick Robertson just told you, Susan, he was at the television station 1 hour ago when Saddam Hussein walked in. Did the president acknowledge you were there, Nick? Did you wave at him? Did he wave back or anything?
The president did not see me. I kept myself very much inconspicuous.
Sometimes the best policy in these matters. But, Susan, yes, our man, CNN's Nick Robertson, has seen the president of Iraq in the past 60 minutes at the TV station, so we know where he is.
Nick, what can you tell us about how Saddam Hussein looked? Did he look tired? Did he look tense? Did he look angry? Did he look frustrated? What can you tell us, perhaps speculate about the psychological strain on the man?
Very hard to say indeed. I would probably not describe him with any of the words that you used there. Maybe resolute, and maybe there was a determination in his step, and the people with him were walking a pace to keep up with him.
I'm sure the viewers all over the world are very, very interested in your sighting of President Saddam Hussein, because you may be the only Westerner.
It's really hard because I have a lot of friends over there and people that I worked with the 3 years that I was in. And we all know basketball isn't as important as what's going on over there, so it makes it kind of tough.
Troops were being given chemical warfare atropine kits for the antidotes for chemical warfare.
So Redick was standing there. I was not very far from the ABC News offices. The area.
A lot of guys are just wondering why are we here right now.
You look around, everybody's awful quiet. You know, I've never come out to a game before like this.
That'll do it for this edition of SportsCenter.
United States of America.
Security has been tightened at U.S. airports and at American installations worldwide. There are reports of possible terrorist attacks in South America, Europe, and Asia, but no one has been hurt. From Fox News, this has been a MIDI.
By cruise missiles. The Defense Department says the attacks have been very effective, but warns this is an ongoing operation. Allied casualties so far: a U.S. Navy FA-18 Hornet shot down, a British Tornado GR-1 fighter bomber, and a Kuwaiti warplane. CNN's live coverage from Baghdad has been shut down by Iraq's information ministry.
This official, Mr. Allah, who's been a good friend to CNN for our time here, is now, demanding that we do something that we desperately don't want to do.
So, John, I will make the decision to cut the communications because I'm the senior man here. So for Bob Weiner and John Holloway and John Holloman and Bernie Shaw and myself, Peter Arnett, who is signing off from Baghdad for CNN, and I hope we can resume our communication with you in the very near future.
For those of you in Atlanta and up and down the network, we'll try to get back in touch with you as soon as we can. Obviously, this is something that is just abhorrent to all of us.
Several hours after that happened, a phone call from a resident of occupied Kuwait City provided insights into what has been going on there since the start of Operation Desert Storm.
But at about 9 o'clock, we heard some aircraft noise in the south of Kuwait City, raiding that area near the military hospital. We had explosion for about 10 minutes, and then it disappeared. And then later, about 11 o'clock, there was a raid on a camp called G1. It's near the city proper, and it's also a huge camp. There was about 2 explosions, and some aircraft noises were heard.
From official Washington, repeated statements that Iraq's Saddam Hussein brought this battle upon himself, and repeated summations of what he must do to end the fight.
We are going to prevail. I don't want to get caught up in some semantics about all of this. It's got to get out of Kuwait. And it's got to do it with no concessions or no condition. That was determined long ago when he failed to comply with the UN resolutions. Now, in keeping with those, we are using force, and we're not going to stop until he fully complies with the resolution. So let's not worry about what we call it. Let's worry about we want to make it clear, full compliance with the UN resolution, full compliance with the objectives of the coalition forces.
Thus far, the Iraqi leader appears unmoved by air raids, much less rhetoric. The Reuters wire service quotes Mr. Hussein's ambassador to Belgium as saying that Iraq still plans to attack Israel. And there was this response when Iraq's envoy to Britain was asked whether the initial success of Operation Desert Storm would make his nation lay down its arms and exit Kuwait.
Not at all. We believe in our cause, and we will defend our cause.
News of the initial success of Operation Desert Storm have sent stock prices soaring and the cost of crude oil tumbling. I'm Don Miller, CNN reporting.
For the latest at the Pentagon, we go live to CNN's Wolf Blitzer. Wolf?
Well, a little while ago, we had a briefing with a senior Defense Department official who said that as we speak right now, U.S. fighter bombers are, in his words, revisiting targets in occupied Kuwait and in Iraq, targets that may not have been completely destroyed in the initial wave of U.S. and Allied bombing runs. Some of those targets are, of course, Strategic Command and Control Headquarters, Scud missile bases, nuclear facilities, chemical facilities. All of the day one targets were supposedly very successfully conducted, but to make sure they're sending back the fighter bombers to take another look, to take some more pictures, to assess the situation, to assess the damage. There is a sense, the senior official said, that the fixed Scud bases, the Scud ballistic missile bases, were destroyed in that initial run. There is, though, some considerable concern still here at the Pentagon about the mobile Iraqi Scud missiles, whether any of them were long-range strategic B-52 bombers are dropping their bombs on Republican Guard elite forces in northwestern Kuwait and in southern Iraq. We don't completely know the extent of the damage yet. The U.S. itself is taking pictures, assessing all of the damage from those very, very heavy bombs. We also know that the U.S. used at least 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the battleships Wisconsin and Missouri. Both of them are right now in the Persian Gulf. We do know that U.S. ground forces, Army units, Marines, are moving closer to the border from Saudi Arabia towards Kuwait. They're on the move, in the words of one senior Pentagon official, but they have not crossed the border yet. They are awaiting additional airstrikes before President Bush and Defense Secretary Cheney and the commanders of Operation Desert Storm send in U.S. ground forces. They want to completely exhaust the air power to make sure that once the ground troops go in, they will meet as little resistance as possible. There is no indication here that any Iraqi troops, at least in significant numbers, are surrendering or trying to cross over. The situation remains obviously a source of great concern, although senior Pentagon officials expressed quiet confidence that day one has gone about as good from the U.S. point of view as could have been expected. Yes. Wolf Blitzer.
Excuse me, Wolf. I see that one report tells us that pilots are meeting more resistance this time around. Are you getting any new information about that and where the military campaign is right now?
We asked that question to this senior Pentagon official who asked not to be identified by name. Was there more anti-aircraft resistance to U.S. aircraft and Allied aircraft? And the answer we got was that the basic answer was no. That in any air campaign, the stiffest resistance in all of the textbooks suggests that the stiffest resistance comes at the beginning, before units are destroyed or before command and control headquarters are weakened or radar put out of commission. So there's no confirmation at all that there's stiffer resistance. If anything, the sense is that that is just the opposite.
All right, Wolf Blitzer.
Well, they've gone according to the game plan, and all the troops have executed it well.
And over Baghdad just looked like a 4th of July party, you know, fireworks going off.
Except for an artillery attack on a Japanese-operated oil refinery near the Saudi border, Iraqi forces had put up almost no defense. But in Baghdad, Saddam Hussein continued to bluster, saying the mother of all battles had only begun. But even as he continued to posture, there was no question the attacks had been devastating, and new waves of American planes were already launching another attack, as ground forces were preparing for what they were calling their turn.
How do you feel about hearing that the aerial bombardment was a success so far?
Well, it cuts down on the competition, and it might just make our job just a little bit more easier.
Yeah, I'm ready to do what it's called to do, or whatever it may be. Key is getting home, one piece.
Dan, one general said today we're going to wage war 24 hours a day. That is the first 24 hours. And General George Crist, those ground troops are saying it's their turn now. All signs point to this conclusion. They're going to get their turn.
They're going to get their turn. Bob, is to paraphrase Stonewall Jackson, grab a hold of him like an old dog and don't let go until he quits.
How will the ground attack start, General?
The ground attacks are going to start after this air campaign is done, after they're softened up, and the ground commanders think that they've got a good chance to go in there and break them up without taking a lot of casualties.
General George Crist. Dan?
Bob, General Crist, let me ask you that you've heard David Martin and Jim Stewart of the Pentagon, who are constantly trolling their sources, say that every indication is that the ground offensive, if there is to be one, if there must be one, is probably still some time away. But I gather, General Crist, from what you say, that you wouldn't be surprised to see the timetable moved up and to see it happen reasonably soon.
Dan, the forces are already beginning to move up on the border, and they're massing. They have to get into position, of course, but once in position and once they're ready to go, then it becomes a function of how much damage can they do up here so that we can go in there and take this thing with minimum, I don't mean no, but less casualties than we might have to take if they weren't being hit. And that, I think, hinges on the time.
Thank you, General Crist, and I'm thinking about some of the marvelous American fighting men and women we've met in Saudi Arabia recently. General Walter Boomer, who commands the Marines, General Barry McCaffrey, who commands the Army, Colonel Gwen Pope with the 2-4 Cav of the Army, and Colonel Jim Mattis, a Marine colonel with a ground combat unit. All of those men now feeling that their hour of
great.
Allahu Akbar.
God is great.
Allahu Akbar.
God is great. Victory will be ours with the help of God, and the evil people will be.
Satellite reception from Baghdad was sometimes poor today. The Iraqi dictator was also seen greeting people in the street. It was feared that war would provoke violent anti-Americanism in the Arab world, terrorism, but today there was almost no reaction to the Allied attack anywhere in the Middle East. Analyst Bill Quandt.
Saddam was not a popular figure, but people believed he had genuine power. If the power is shown to be a sham, very few people are going to be in the streets in favor of Saddam Hussein.
Reaction at home was also unforeseen.
Just a few moments ago, the New York Stock Exchange finished its best day in more than 3 years.
As the day wore on, Allied air attacks on Iraqi targets in Iraq and Kuwait continued around the clock.
Just to bear in mind, as we continue to watch this, what our military advisors have said to us, what the Pentagon has said to us. The Iraqi still has a semblance of Air Force somewhere in Iraq, and the Air Force knows that it has had to go back to the airfields, as well as the missile sites and the military command centers, and the rail lines and the highways in an attempt to cut off those Iraqi forces which are in occupied Kuwait.
Peter,
go ahead, Bill.
I could also add to this the feeling that I'm picking up fairly strongly here that the Air Force and the other flight wings feel they have to continue this mission because there is the suspicion that perhaps the Iraqis are holding back some of their air assets and that they may prepare to use those later when perhaps the Americans tone down their campaign. So that's to some degree why they continue to fly as many sorties, and also you don't always destroy your target the first time around. Many of them are hardened shelters and you have to keep going at them time and time again. So this campaign is far
gas masks that we've provided for our staff, which ironically we've been told on a number of occasions are actually better.
Okay.
Okay.
Throughout the country, people have been ordered to put this on at the moment. Dean Reynolds, will ask somebody to put the phone up to Dean's ear if that is possible.
Where's the, what was that? What was that noise?
Dean, can you hear me? Dean Reynolds, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Peter. I don't know if you can hear me through this contraption.
Yes, I can hear you just fine, so don't worry about your ability to communicate with us at all, and we can hear your radio in the background. I gather that people throughout the country have been ordered to put their gas masks on?
That's correct. And to go to a sealed room.
Are you in a sealed room?
We are indeed, Peter.
Tell me where you are in Jerusalem.
We are on Jaffa Street, not far from the Jerusalem Hilton. I suppose about, what would you say, a mile or so from the Old City?
Yeah, just about a mile west of the Old City, I think, from the Jaffa Gate in the Old City. Very much
You could hear it now. Peter, we're hearing explosions now in Tel Aviv. Actually, move out of the way. Please zoom to the picture.
This is a camera on the roof of the ABC News Bureau in Tel Aviv, which is looking down at the Central Market. It is about 2:30 in the morning. Let's listen to what we can hear. These are the worst fears realized, of course, of Israelis and Americans. Saddam Hussein had said from the outset that he was going to try to engage the Israelis if the war came. And of course,